Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Prioritize Opportunities. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to as many as possible. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, BPM, HubSpot for Startups, and Google Cloud. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch just a couple polls to step back, see how everyone in the room is doing today. This first one is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? I'll give it just a few moments for folks to submit a response there. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and end this poll, share these results. All right, it looks like optimism coming up in the lead. Always great to see that, but definitely have some feelings of surviving and anxiety. I'm super confident our presentation today will be helpful for those feelings. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch the second one. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one just tells us a little bit more about your current entrepreneurial needs so we can make sure we are providing relevant and meaningful programming to all of you. Awesome. We got folks from Texas, Germany, California, South Carolina, Michigan, Germany, India, Switzerland, Maryland, Alabama, New York, Texas, Barcelona, Ohio. All right, welcome, welcome. So great to have you all dialing in from all over the place. Awesome. I'm gonna give it just another moment here. All right. Gonna end this poll and share these results. All right, looks like finance and scale coming up in the lead, but we got needs all across the board here. So thank you all so much for participating. Super helpful. Gonna stop sharing that poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest, Dan Olsen, trainer and consultant, and the author of the Lean Product Playbook. Dan, it is such a pleasure to have you here joining us today, and we're super excited for this conversation on prioritizing opportunities and customer needs.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm excited to be here. Let me get my
Awesome.
presentation going here. I'll share my screen
Perfect.
with you all. And then there. All right. I think y'all should be able to see. There we go. Great. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. I was just chatting with the NASDAQ folks before. I gave a talk a long, long time ago in South of Market at their office, the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center there, shortly after my book came out. So it's great to be back and talk to the community today. Also, one thing, if you could put in your job function real quick, it was great to see where everybody's from. If you could put in your job function, that'd be great. If you're a product manager, designer, entrepreneur, I probably have a bunch of entrepreneurs here. That would be great to get a little bit more, learn a bit more about you. But I'm really excited to talk about a topic that I think is really important, which is how to prioritize customer needs. you can also think about it, how to prioritize opportunities in the marketplace. So, all right, great. And real quick about my background, I started out with a technical background. My parents gave me a computer when I was a kid. I'm glad they did because I started coding at an early age. I was an electrical engineering major. My first job was actually designing nuclear submarines for the Navy. And then after doing that for a while, I moved out here to Silicon Valley, where I've been ever since, to go to business school at Stanford. And while at Stanford, chief expectations that are nice. While at Stanford, I trying to figure out what to do after graduation. I learned about this awesome new career called product management. And the more I learned about it, the more it sounded interesting. And I asked people, where's the best place to learn? And they said Intuit. So I was fortunate to get a job at Intuit, where I learned a lot about product management. After Intuit, I wanted to take what I learned and apply it to startups. So I was like head of product for startups. I was co-founder of a startup. So for those of you that are co-founders, I've been in your shoes. And then I got into speaking, and I got into consulting, basically being like an interim VP of product for early stage startups. And that was a lot of fun. And then that experience led to writing the book, Lean Product Playbook, which came out 9 years ago now. And I'm also, you'll see the meetup there. I'll share a link. Actually, I can share a link right now. Basically, there wasn't a lot of resources. There weren't a lot of resources when I was coming up in product management. So I started this group, the Lean Product Meetup, to share best practices. So I'll put a link to it in chat. It's free to join on Meetup. I've been running it since 2014. And you can go to my website, which is also in the chat, to learn more about me there. And so I think we have some product people. The interesting thing about when you talk to startups is you may not have the title product manager, but if you're a founder or someone involved in development, you may be wearing that hat. And so I want to start out right away by sharing a secret, one of kind of the product management secret that we have that not everybody necessarily knows, which is the product manager's motto. And the product manager's motto, it's a bit like Spider-Man's motto. When I have a live audience, I usually ask people, you can put it in chat, see who knows what Spider-Man's. Do we have any Marvel fans here who can help me out with Spider-Man's motto in the chat? I'll give it a second to see. I'm sure that among the people that we have, someone will get it. Let me find my Zoom window here. There we go. Go on. Okay, great. All right. All right. No one's. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump. I'm sure some people on there, maybe they're just kind of getting the chat, which is basically Spider-Man's motto is with great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, right? There we go. Somebody got in there. Anna got in there, and Francisca got in there, and Kevin got in there too. Awesome. Thanks. I know it takes a while to type in chat. That's right. Spider-Man's motto is with great power comes great responsibility. The product manager's motto is similar. It's just a little different, and it's with great responsibility comes no power. So those of you that work in product, you can resonate with this. I'm sure this makes sense to you. Where basically, we have all this responsibility. We're supposed to be responsible for a successful product. We're hitting the KPIs, but no one reports to us, right? So just a funny little joke about the world of product management. And, I want to start this talk off by saying it's tough being a founder and working in a startup. There are statistics out there that say like over 80% of new products fail, over 90% of new products fail. I am going to address today, this is why I love this talk, the top 2 reasons why that lead to this 80% number, right? The top 2 reasons new products fail, so that by the end of this talk, you'll be able to avoid those and increase your odds of success tremendously. That's my goal, okay? Now, a common question when we're having discussions about what a product and what we should build is people say, hey, what features should we build? This is a very common discussion. I'm sure you probably had in the last week or two with your own team. Should we build this feature or that feature? And I would argue that's actually the wrong question that we should be asking. It's not a great place to start. And that's partly what leads to that 80% number. Instead of asking what features we should be building, we should be starting with what customer needs can we address. And that might seem like a subtle distinction, but it's actually a very important distinction. And so I want to talk a little bit about this difference between needs and features. And this gets to the topic, one of my, again, the topic I'm very passionate about, which is the idea of problem space versus solution space. Now, some of you may have heard about this. I've been talking about problem space for a long time. I'm excited to see more and more people talk about it. Let me explain what each one of these is. Problem space is basically a customer problem, need, or benefit that the product should address. If you're talking about how you want your product to help people without talking about solutions or features, then you're talking in the problem space. Say I thought it was just too hard to share photos with your friends. And I said, you know what? I think there's an opportunity to make it easier to share photos with your friends. That statement is a problem space statement. I'm really focusing on how I want to create value. I haven't talked about what I'm going to build. You may have thought about an app or something, but I didn't actually say what I was going to build, right? So the point is to separate problem space and solution space, to think about each clearly. I'm sure a lot of people on here are familiar with agile development. You might be familiar with the agile user story template as a blank type of customer. I want to be able to do blank so I can enjoy blank benefit. That's basically the user story template that most people know. That last part, so I can, that is the essence of problem space. Why would a customer care about this, right? How is it going to create value for the customer? So that's problem space. In contrast, solution space is a specific implementation or design to address the customer need. So we can separate the two. So if I said over here in problem space, hey, I want to make it easier for people to share photos with their friends, there's no solution there. If the very next thing I did was pull out my phone and say, yeah, last week I launched an app on the App Store that does that, that app would be in the solution space. Or if I wasn't, if I hadn't built the app, but one of my friends was a designer and she gave me a set of mockups for the app, even though we hadn't coded it yet, that set of mockups would also be in solution space. So that's the idea, right? Now, why do I share this? I share this because far too often teams go rushing into solution space and start talking right away about what features we should build. And when you do that, you're not spending enough time in the problem space. And that's the number one factor that leads to that 80+% of new products or features failing, is that we start with a solution. We were never clear on what problem it was going to solve for people, right? And this happens a lot. And so my goal is hopefully you can become aware of problem space versus solution space and build that problem space muscle, the ability to distinguish between the two. And if you start listening in meetings, you'll start seeing, gosh, a lot of the conversations that are happening are in solution space, right? Stakeholders are asking for stuff in the solution space. Engineers are proposing, and other team members are proposing things in the solution space. Clients or customers are recommending solutions or asking for solutions, right? And I understand why. I mean, it's kind of like the default way of thinking because we live in solution space. So it makes sense that people's default way of thinking is solution space. So this is a learned thing. You have to learn how to separate this. And I think that whoever on your team that has a product role or is wearing a product management hat, that's one of their main responsibilities because the designers are working on the design, the developers are working on the code. So it's like, who's really thinking about the customer problem? It really lies with whoever's got that product management responsibility on the team, right? And again, it's a learned thing, but hopefully after this talk, you'll start to realize how much of conversation is going. And by the way, the message is not never think about solution space. It's just make sure you think about problem space first, so that when you go to build the solution, you're clear on what problem it's going to solve. So you avoid a ready, fire, aim situation. That's basically what's going on. Now, I like to tell a story to kind of illustrate this. And basically the story I like to tell is when NASA was sending astronauts into space, they knew that the pens, the ballpoint pens that we use here on Earth, wouldn't work because there's no gravity in space. And I got to say right off the bat, the first thing is, if you Google this, you'll end up on some urban legend. You'll say, oh, NASA didn't do this. NASA didn't pay the money for this. It's true. NASA didn't initiate this. And NASA didn't pay any money for it. But one of NASA's contractors on their own said, you know what? I think we can invent a pen that can write in zero gravity. And they went off in the 1960s and spent $1 million of their own money, not NASA's, but a lot of money. And they invented the space pen. So I actually have one here. Somebody gave me after one of my talks, which I appreciate. I haven't been in space to confirm that it works, but basically you can tell it works because if you write upside down, it keeps writing and writing and writing, whereas other pens don't, because it's got a little gas cartridge that pressurizes the ink to make it come out. So that solved that problem for the Americans. Well, the Russians, they had to send their astronauts into space and they had the same problem, but instead of inventing a space pen, they just gave their astronauts pencils. And you can actually buy a Russian space pen. It's just a red pencil in a box, kind of poking fun at this situation, right? So why do I tell this story? Well, first off, if both of these are equally good solutions to the problem, then sometimes we can over-engineer, over-invest, right, in things. So like obviously the ROI, if they both solve that problem, and by the way, I'm describing the problem very narrowly, focusing just on the ability to write in zero gravity. I know there actually are other problems and requirements, like you don't want things to catch on fire, which the pencil would do. You don't want the lead tip to break off. So I was just focusing on that one problem. That's kind of one message. The other is just, hey, even the main reason I tell this is even when you're trying to like stay in the problem space, that solution-based thinking creeps in. And I call it solution pollution, basically, right? And hopefully, again, after this talk, you'll see just how much of it is going on around you, people talking in solution space, right? And it's okay if it happens, right? So next time you're in a meeting and somebody says, oh, I think we should build feature Y, we can build feature X, then you can just say, hey, oh, great, I hear you saying you think we should build feature X. Can you help me understand why would that be valuable to a customer? How would that help a customer, right? So you're trying to help them bridge and think about it and go back, right? So we can do that back here on the pen, there's basically, when he said, hey, my problem space is the ability to I'm going to basically say that we want to invent a pen that writes in space. He had some solution pollution in his problem space, right? He had the word pen in there. Now I understand why. It was Mr. Fisher of the Fisher Pen Company. That's all he did his whole life was design and build pens. So I understand why. But if he just been a little more vague and kind of waved his hands and said a way to write in zero gravity, that would be less solutiony than a pen that writes in zero gravity. So that's an example. You can be like more or less solutiony, and you can get more, less solutiony and more problem in the problem space by asking why. And we can get further in the problem space by asking, well, why do astronauts even need a way to write in zero gravity in the first place, right? And we would eventually get to something like, well, they need a way to document information and refer to it later, right? That may sound like the same thing, but it's actually a little subtle, but we've actually eliminated writing from it. We've gotten to the core of it, which is, hey, I need to be able to capture some information and refer to it later, right? And what that does is it opens up the solution space. Maybe we can invent some Alexa Siri thing that you talk to instead of having to write stuff down. That probably wasn't feasible at the time. But by getting deeper in the solution space, it can open up ideas. Now, when I ask people, hey, who knows this user story template as a blank, I want a blank so I can blank, 90+% of hands go up. But then when I look at people's, tickets, Jira tickets or Trello tickets, I see this kind of stuff, right? This is typical solution completion. Add a drop down that does this, build a wizard that does this, add an API call that does this, right? Add a menu, create a screen. These are all solutions, right? And so when all you put in the Jira ticket is a solution, then you kind of lose the connection to the problem if you ever had it in the first place. And I would argue most of the time people start with a solution, so they don't even have the connection to the problem, right? And Jira lets you have a proper user story as a blank, I want a blank, so I can blank. And then you can use the subtasks to put the solutions in. Again, the message is not never specify solutions. It's just make sure you're clear on what problem it's going to solve, right? And the main framework from my book and my work is the product market fit pyramid. It's a 5-layer pyramid that captures the 5 key hypotheses that you need to get right enough in order to achieve product market fit and have a successful product. Real quick, starts out with target customer, who are we trying to create value for? What are their underserved needs? I'm going to talk about, this is really what I'm talking about today, mainly this layer. What's our value proposition? How are we going to be better and different than the competition? What features should we have in there? That's where we want to apply MVP thinking, minimum viable product thinking, and UX. The thing I want to share here is an overlay of problem space and solution space on the 5 layers, right? So the first 3 layers are all problem space, and only the top 2 are solution space, right? The idea is when you have a solid foundation problem space, then you can confidently propose solution ideas and know how they're going to deliver value for your customers. But what happens if you just jump in and say, I think we should build feature X? You're jumping in right here at this 4th layer, the feature set, right? That's what I mean by ready, fire, aim. You're not aiming. This is how you aim. These 3 layers is how you aim to make sure the feature ideas you come up with are going to be successful, right? So let's further illustrate this. I used to work at Intuit. One of our popular products is TurboTax. At a high level, we could say, what problem does it solve, right? You could say it's TurboTax software. It's tax software, but that's a solution description. So some high level problem would be something like, help me prepare my taxes, right? So real quick, if people want to chat in, I'm sure we have, and the people that are on the call, some people that have used TurboTax, try to real quick, just try to stay in the problem space. Talk about how is it valuable. Put in a chat like a short little bullet point of how has TurboTax been, if you've used it in the last 2 or 3 years, why was it valuable to you? Like, let's say, and try to stay in the problem space without doing a solution. Let's see what people come up with. And the metaphor I use for this is peeling the onion. It's good to know that the overall onion we're using is helping people with their taxes, but basically we want to peel the onion. And that's the trick is, it's almost impossible to get too detailed in the problem space, right? So I see people putting stuff in here, right? Great, thanks, Diana. Thanks, Ray, for putting stuff in there, right? And when I run this exercise live, I get a lot of stuff. I get a lot of different answers people give, and it's actually some people might give the same answer, but usually it's rare because people aren't robots. They don't say the exact same thing. So you're going to get a lot of different statements like I'm getting here in chat, and then your job is basically to kind of like write them down and make sense of them, right? And so if we kind of took all the suggestions and deduped them and cleaned them up, we might end up with a list, that includes these 7, right? Help me prepare my taxes, reduce my audit risk, check my return, save me time preparing taxes, save me time filing taxes, maximize my tax sections, cost me less than a CPA, right? And these are distinct benefits, right? And I see some of them coming through in what people are saying in chat, right? And then the one thing you do, so you want to brainstorm with your team, like what are all the ways we could, imagine you're on the TurboTax team, what are all the ways we could help people with taxes, and brainstorm all the things. And it'll be messy, there'll be a long list of things, but once you clean it up and dedupe it, you'll find that there is some kind of order or structure here. And that's what we call a benefit ladder, where yes, these 3 benefits are distinct, But when we kind of keep asking why to get to the higher level benefit, which I call benefit ladder, because like a ladder, you're going up each step each time you say why, you find that they're all related to, hey, improve my confidence, right? Hey, and this narrative might go, before into TurboTax, I used to do my taxes by hand. I don't know the tax code. I'm not good with numbers, probably making mistakes. A friend recommended TurboTax to me. It held my hand and guided me through. Next thing you know, I'm done with my taxes and I feel a lot more confident in my taxes, right? That's an emotional benefit. There's these other two, save time, have to do with saving you time, whether it's preparing taxes or filing taxes. So these again are what we call benefit ladders, like a way to organize. And finally, save money, right? Whether it's saving you money by reducing your tax bill or saving you money compared to a CPA, right? So this, step one is you brainstorm, okay, we want to help people with taxes. What are all the things we could do? Then you clean that list up and dedupe it, and then you organize it by benefit ladders. And you might get excited and have multiple layers. Honestly, 2 layers is enough. Just all the detailed benefits organized by their overall problem. And this is what I call problem space definition. And this is the problem space definition for TurboTax. Basically, almost anything the TurboTax team does to add a feature or anything that they do with their product is just another way to make you feel more confident about your taxes, to save you more time on your taxes, or save more money on your taxes. And every once in a while, you add a whole new benefit ladder to your value proposition, which is very exciting, but they have plenty of work to do to continue to mine these benefits and do a better and better job delivering them. Okay, so that's step one. If you want to avoid that 80% failure rate, is start with a problem, brainstorm the problem space, and then create a problem space definition like this for your product area, for your market opportunity. The next thing you might be asking is, okay, great, we brainstormed 10 or 20 things that we could do. How do we decide which ones we focus on? Because we can't deliver on all of them, right? So a way to think about what we just did is we did divergent thinking to explore ideas and what all the possibilities and suspend judgment. Now we're going to converge, and we want to answer the question, out of all these needs that we brainstormed, which ones offer the largest opportunities to create customer value? And this is where I want to share a powerful framework, because when I faced this in my career, trying to decide, we have all these things we could do, how do we decide which ones are going to create the most value? I tried a lot of different frameworks and ways of doing it. And the one that worked the best and the one that I recommend is using importance versus satisfaction. So let me explain this framework basically, okay? So importance is whatever user need we're talking about, save time on my taxes, save money on my taxes, reduce my audit risk, whatever it is. How important is it to our target customer? By the way, everything is a function of the target customer, right? The pyramid, the base of the pyramid is target customer. So if you talk to one set of customers, one market segment, they're going to give you one answer on importance. If you talk to another segment, they might give you a different answer on importance. And in fact, what makes a segment is they give you the same answer for the same needs on importance, basically, right? Okay. Somebody asked if it's being recorded. I think it is. Okay, so that's that's frankly in the problem space from low to high. On the x-axis is satisfaction. However they're getting that need met today, right? How are they getting that need met today? How satisfied are they with that? That's basically satisfaction. So that's in the solution space. However they're getting that need met today, how satisfied are they? Now, if you're thinking about how would we get this data, you can envision it as a survey question. You could just ask, okay, for whatever need, each of the needs, how important is this? And I like to use a 5-point scale from not important to extremely important, right? So you can compare the answers that you get. And then on satisfaction, it's how satisfied are you with how that need is being met, however you're getting it met today. Now here, I like to use a 7-point two-sided scale from extremely dissatisfied to extremely satisfied, because people can be happy or they can be unhappy, and you have a neutral middle, right? So that's kind of, you want to think about. But you can do it with a survey, but you don't have to do it with a survey. You can use it with your team without talking to any customers, and I'll show you how to do that. Of course, I'd want to go validate it right afterwards. But basically, let's divide it up into the quadrants of low and high, okay? So we have low importance, high, low satisfaction, high, right? Now, in the bottom left corner, what is this saying? This is saying whatever user need we're talking about is low importance to our customers. And however they're getting that need met today, they have low satisfaction with that solution. This bottom right quadrant is saying it's also whatever need it is has low importance of user need, but high satisfaction with however they're getting met today. Now, at the end of the day, you actually want to avoid these quadrants, right? Why is that? Because it's basically a low importance need. One of the fundamental tenets of creating customer value is you want to address a high importance need. Like the higher the importance of the need, the more valuable it's going to be. And you hear some startups doing things, going after something, And then they fail, and you realize after the fact, it's like, well, that wasn't really important. The founder thought it was important, but they didn't actually find a target market that also found it was important, right? Or maybe most likely they started in solution space and never even got clear on what the need was and whether it was important or not, right? So this is the second part of what I'm teaching you to help you avoid that 80% failure rate. Okay, which is, I'll summarize in a sec. In the upper right quadrant here, we have high importance of user needs, so that's better, and then low importance. But we also have high satisfaction. So what is that saying? Customers are telling us, yes, it's a very important need, but I already have a solution that I'm happy with, right? High satisfaction. That is what I call a competitive market. For me, that's the definition of a competitive market. There are people addressing these needs in a pretty good way. And the example I always think of here is Google Internet Search. If we said, what problem does Google Internet Search solve for people? Something like find answers to my questions or find the information I'm looking for. And when I ask people how important is that most of the time, they say high. So that's why it's plotted at high importance. And then I go on and ask the people that use Google Internet Search, how satisfied are you with it? And they're pretty satisfied. You don't have to modify your query or something, but you usually find the information that you're looking for. That's why that belongs in that quadrant, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't go after any opportunities in this quadrant, but you hear people say you need to be 10x better. This is the quadrant where you need to be 10x better because people have found a solution they're happy with. They're not just going to switch to your solution if you have a Me Too product, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can try to disrupt and get into those quadrants. All right, that leaves the fourth quadrant here, which is upper left quadrant, high importance of user need. So that's good because it's high importance. And people have a low satisfaction with however they're getting that met today. So people are telling you it's a very important need, and I don't have a good solution yet. This quadrant is where the opportunities lie, right? And they won't be there forever because all other startups and companies are trying to find and address these. But this is basically the second thing to do to de-risk your product development efforts is, one, don't start in solution space, start in problem space. Secondly, take your problems and plot them on this and try to address a problem that's in the upper left quadrant. If you do those two things, you will reduce those odds, those failure odds of 80% down significantly. And now you know that you're addressing a problem that's really important and a big opportunity. And now it's just a matter of execution on features and design and things like that. You've really de-risked it a lot at that point. And what I like about this framework is it's meant to be a visual framework. So let's say we have a product, our product, and we survey our users and we say, hey, tell us how important is the user need that this solves for you, and tell us how satisfied are you with our product. And we take all that data and we average it. We'll end up with an average satisfaction number, right, from our survey of our users, and we can plot that as an X coordinate, and we'll end up with an average importance, and we can plot that as a Y coordinate. And then when we do that, that red dot is basically our product. It makes a rectangle with the origin, right? With the origin here. And basically the general idea is, hey, the bigger the rectangle your product makes when you plot it on this important satisfaction, the more value it creates. And if there's another product represented by this green dot that addresses a higher importance need with a higher level of satisfaction, then its rectangle is just that much bigger, then it just creates that much more value, right? And one way to think about this, now that we turn towards an opportunity, what are the opportunities is, let's say this green dot is the best product in the marketplace, okay? So, and they're currently delivering this level of satisfaction. Well, another way to look at this graph is, gosh, well, okay, well, they're not delivering 100% satisfaction yet. How much opportunity is there to still deliver more value on that same need, right? And so now we can take this line and go all the way to 100% satisfaction. And that makes another rectangle to the right, which is the opportunity. Basically, the bigger that rectangle to the right, the bigger the opportunity there is to create customer value, right? And so when you take that to its extreme and you say, hey, well, one thing is if you were on that team for that product, one way to think about what you're trying to do is basically we're trying to increase the satisfaction level of how we're meeting that need for people, right? That's basically how I think about it, right? You can try to break everything down. Sometimes people get into debates about, is this a must-have? Is this a nice-to-have? Is this a vitamin? Is this, things like that. This kind of takes it all out of being a black and white, and they have a much more nuanced discussion about it. If you take it to the extreme and you say, where's the biggest opportunity? If you plot things, basically the closer you are to this corner, the greater the opportunity to create customer value. This corner is where there's the biggest opportunity to the right? You've got the highest importance and the lowest satisfaction of 0. And for a second, we can write a little formula for the area of the rectangle to the right, and we can consider that like an opportunity score, where the higher the score, the better. And it's basically just the height of the rectangle, which is the importance, times 1 minus the satisfaction, which is how much room is there to the right? And that's as far as I got in the book. And so a few years ago, though, I actually finally was able to create a visualization of this that I'm really excited about because it just reinforces this, right? So what is this showing? This is showing you importance from 0 to 1, satisfaction from 0 to 1. And when you run the numbers, it shows you how the opportunity score changes. And you don't actually need to care about the score, honestly. You just want to make sure, like basically the hotter the color, the bigger the opportunity to create customer value. So you can see the closer you are here, it's like bright red, but then it drops off. And as you can see, really, it's only the upper left quadrant that gives you a chance to create significant customer value. The bottom left quadrant is blue because it's low importance. The bottom right quadrant is also low importance. The upper right quadrant is dark blue because, yes, it's important, but people are happy with what they've got, right? So that's the idea, basically. Yeah, thanks, Harkerman. I was excited there. I always wanted to create a visualization, but I didn't, so wasn't able to in time for the book. So this is the idea. And all you can do, what you can do, you don't have to be quantitative. Most of my tools, you can use it in a quantitative way. You also use it in a qualitative way. Now, let me show you the qualitative way to do it. Okay, you don't need fancy numbers and all that jazz. You can just take on a whiteboard or on Mural or Miro or something, create something like this, right? Or PowerPoint, or Google Slides, whatever. I actually have a Google Slides template I can share with y'all, where basically you just divide it up into low, medium, high. If you want to do 4x4 grid, 5x5 grid, great. Then what you do is you take all your problem space statements that you're considering and you write them on little sticky notes. And you can do this obviously on a whiteboard in physical world instead of digital world if you want. Then what you do is you take each of these and you discuss with your team and say, okay, what do we think this one? Is it high importance, medium importance? What do we think? What's the current satisfaction? What do we think? What do we think, right? And basically you place them. And one thing that can always be helpful is you compare, okay, does that really make sense that this one's higher importance than this one? Does that make sense? You can kind of compare them and you move them around. It's not going to be perfect, right? But basically you place them. And now one thing you can do, sometimes what I do is I'll have the heat map behind it, just paste it behind it, and you can see the colors. But the other thing you can do, just a quick hack, is just draw a line from that upper left corner to the middle of the Post-it note, right? And whoever's got the shortest line, that's basically the closest to that corner, right? So basically in this case, Save Time has the shortest line, Improve Confidence has the second shortest line, and Save Money has the third. So that would be the order that I would prioritize this in, basically, right? That's the idea. So, you can get fancy with all the numbers, but you can also just do a quick and dirty hack. And this is great. When I do my live workshops, what I mainly do, I love speaking to groups like this, but I teach like half day, full day, 2-day workshops where we actually, with real exercises, we do this. And it's awesome to see, because a lot of what we're doing in product management, product development is trying to figure out with a lot of things with a lot of uncertainty. And these simple frameworks with simple 2x2s kind of help cut through the noise. And everybody can see, oh yeah, we all agree that these 2 or 3 opportunities are big. We can all agree these other ones aren't good. So it can help get people aligned and make decisions. Now, there's one other way you can create value, and it's through disruptive innovation. I do have to caveat it here, especially here where I live in Silicon Valley. Far too many people think they're disrupting than really are, right? I'm disrupting this market. I'm disrupting this market. So people throw that term around pretty loosely. Luckily for me, I have a video that explains it. So I'm just going to play this video real quick, and then we'll go there, because here's the video. Here we go.
Now for that one, this is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the
and then
amps
Oops, sorry guys, my bad.
go up to 10.
exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up,
Yeah.
all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Okay, so our friends at Spinal Tap have kind of given us an operating definition of disruptive innovation, which is basically means like taking it to 11, right? Taking it to 11 is what that means, right? What does that mean? What I mean by that is, this satisfaction axis, I've shown it with like low to high, but you can imagine, say, it's like 1 to 10, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. And what a true disruptive innovation means is, hey, everyone's sitting here with a 10 out of 10 on satisfaction. They love the product that they've got. They like it. But then all of a sudden, new technology enables, not always, but enables some new thing that creates a higher level of satisfaction. It basically redefines its axis. So what, instead of delivering a 10, it now delivers an 11, and it kind of redefines that scale. Let me show you an illustration of this. And the example I want to give is listening to music on the go. I'm sure a lot of people here on the webinar like to listen to music on the go. It's a customer need. It's, that's not a solution. It's a need. And we have some solutions today, but let's go back to the 80s and think about what was the top solution. If you want to listen to music on the go in the 80s, what was the top solution? And feel free to put in the chat if you want, right? But basically, and some of you may not have been around then, but for those of us that were, it was the Sony Walkman, right? When the Walkman came out, it was amazing, right? You could listen to your tapes on the go. You can make your mixtapes, it was awesome, right? And so if we asked people in the 80s who were using Walkman, hey, how satisfied are you? We would probably get 10 out of 10, right? And before that, people were saying boombox or like a small transistor radio. Yeah, portable radio was probably the best solution before that, but you couldn't pick your songs. Now you could pick your songs. And then what happened though? Then after a little while, MP3 players came out. And the first ones were a little rough, right? They were hard to use. The battery life wasn't that good, but eventually they got better. They held more songs than a tape would. You didn't have to fast forward or rewind. They were lighter, smaller. You could jog with them, run with them, things like that. And so that basically what used to be a 10, the Walkman was no longer a 10, right? You can view it as the MP3 player took it to 11, or basically just redefined the axis and everything shifted down, right? And then what happened? Well, then Apple came out with their iPod and blew away all the other MP3 players because it was so much easier to use, held so many more songs, right? And that was basically was integrated with the iTunes. There are a lot of other benefits that made it the new 10. It took it to 11, basically. And then now we all just listen on our phones, right? So this is an example of multiple ways of disruptive innovation in the same category, right? The need is the same the whole time. I want to listen to music on the go. That's the need. And by the way, I forgot to mention, needs don't change anywhere quickly as solutions, right? New technology waves can come and go. So the interesting thing, if we go back to disruptive innovation, I've been talking about Google Internet search as an example. Can you think of something that might be disrupting this? So that might deliver higher level of satisfaction than Google Internet search these days? I think a lot of people feel like Gen AI has the possibility to do that, right? Exactly, right? So that's what happens. So Gen AI is kind of taking it to 11 as far as solving people's needs for finding the information that they need and other needs, right? So it's interesting. So that's an example of a disruptive innovation as well. So what I want to close out with is, let's apply this model that I shared with you. Again, two things. Start in the problems. If you want to have your odds be better than 80% failure, if you want to increase your odds, start in the problem space. And then, plot your ideas here with your sticky notes and try to find something that's the upper left quadrant. If you do those two things, then basically you're going to increase your odds significantly. So let's apply this framework and see if it can explain why some products fail and some succeed. So the two products I'm going to talk about in the case studies are Segue. Hopefully people are familiar with Segue, and Uber, right? Now let's go in and start off with Segue. And we say, what problem? We want to start out with what problem did Segue address? Feel free to put it in chat if you want. Usually when I do this, people say transportation or travel. I say, yes, that's true. But like if we were going to fly to Paris, if we need to go to Paris, we're going to take like a plane or a boat. So something about short distances, right? Traveling short distances. That would be the problem that it addresses. And then I ask people, how important is it to travel short distances? And it's pretty important, right? It's how you get around. It's how you get to the store, things like that, right? So we would plot this like this, right? Travel short distances is the problem, and it's high importance. So we know it's high importance. Now, as we talk about specific solutions, we can talk about the satisfaction with that solution. Before, I know we all ride Segways today, but before that, what was the top solution that people use to travel short distances, right? You can put in the chat if you want. Sometimes I get things like skateboards, things like that. But basically, walking was the main way that people, it's almost like basic, but walking is the main way people travel short distances. And if I ask people, for most people, how satisfied are you with walking? There might be some people that have pain or have issues with walking, but most people, able-bodied people, are able to, that would be satisfaction. So this is kind of the market situation that the Segue founder was coming into. And so what we want to do is we can articulate what was his hypothesis. So walking is sitting there meeting this high importance need with pretty much a 10 out of 10. What was he thinking? He thought he was going to disrupt walking. He thought his Segue was going to take it to 11, right? That's what he thought. And I think he kind of fits the general profile of a founder who kind of falls in love with the technology and the solution and is like, oh my gosh, the segue is so amazing. Everyone's going to use one. They're all walking now and they think that's fine, but wait till they see this thing. Wait till they see my new technology, my new solution, right? That right there is why, like, a lot of times that 80% of products fail is the founder kind of falls in love with technology. And it's like, well, what problem was it going to really solve? And did you validate that that was an important problem with people and things like that, right? That's the idea, right? So he thought I was going to take it to 11. He was convinced everybody in the United States and then the world would have a Segway and no one would be walking anymore. That's not quite how things played out, right? He launched a Segway and it didn't get wide customer adoption. Most people didn't consider the speed benefit important. And by the way, I like to use in my book and talk sometimes a fishing metaphor, which is if you want to catch a certain type of customer, it's like trying to catch a certain type of fish. You got to figure out, hey, I'm trying to catch a trout. What do trout like to eat? I need to put that bait on my hook and throw that in, right? Well, the target customer is the fish you're trying to catch. Your product is basically the bait on the hook. And so he thought he was going to catch all the fish. Everybody that walks were going to buy his product. That's not how it turned out. But it did. He did catch a small number of, and not the whole ocean of fish, but two very specific segments, right? And this just further reiterates that basically target customer, everything's a function of target customer, right? So can people help me out here think what two target customer segments actually, resonated with the segue and actually used it, right? So there were two basically. One was mall cops, right? And the second one was police officers, people say, or tourists were the other one, right? So those are, out of all the people that walk, he thought he was going to get all the people that walk. That's really the only people you see still using one these days, right? Now what we can do, we can flip it around and say, okay, yeah, we have empirical data now. We launched our product. We thought we were going to get all the fish that walk, but we only got these two types of fish. We got mall cops and we got tourists. Now we can flip around and say, what was it about them? What is it about these two fish that's different from all of the other fish that make this be a good product for them, but not for everybody else, right? What's the fundamental reason why? And basically, it's that they walk a lot, right? They're either walking long distances, like the mall cops going around whatever perimeter they have to do all day, right? Each loop might not be that big, but they do it all the time. And then the tourists, they're going to a new city. They want to see as much as they can. They could walk, but they're not going to be able to see as much, and they're going to get tired or hot. And so by using a segue, they can see a lot more of the town, right? So this is frankly a behavioral segmentation. So we could sum it all up into, hey, you tell me how many kilometers or miles you walk a week or a day, and I can tell you whether you're in the target market for a segue or not, right? So that was the deal. So it didn't plan out. He thought he was going to disrupt. I think, he had some cool technology for the self-stabilization and the electric charge stuff, right, that helped inspire a lot of other things, but it just didn't play out the way he thought. He took it to 11. And by the way, in general, trying to do a disruptive innovation is riskier than just going for that upper left quadrant of opportunity. All right, let's switch gears and talk about Uber. So what need does Uber address? When I do this live, feel free to chat again. People say, well, transportation again. I'm like, yes, but again, it's within a certain range because you're not going to, if you have to fly a plane or something or take a plane. But there's something special about Uber, which is I need, take me where I need to go. But for some reason, I can't drive myself. I don't want to drive myself, right? That's the key, the crux of it. And if I ask people, hey, how important is it to you when you need to go somewhere without driving yourself? It's usually pretty important. It's like people are going to the airport, they're going to a doctor's appointment, they're going to some place where there's like no parking, something like that, right? So again, we list the benefit, take me where I need to go, and we put it in high importance. Now, before Uber came out, what was the top solution that people used to get where they needed to go without driving themselves, right? And taxis was the top solution. The next question I asked is, great. So back then, what was kind of the overall satisfaction level with the taxi experience? Was it low, medium, or high? And there are good taxi drivers out there, but in general, most people, I think, would say it was low. Now, again, it depends on where you are. If you're in London or Manhattan, New York, it's fine because it's just like public transportation. You walk out and you get it. But most other parts, at least in the US, you have to call. You call the cab. Okay, give me your address. How long? 10 minutes. Okay, and you sit there and wait 10 minutes. And sometimes they show up in 10 minutes. Sometimes they don't, right? So, and we can get more detailed about other aspects of the customer experience, like, how courteous the driver was, how convenient it was to pay, how safe you felt, how clean the car was, things like that. So I'm not trying to, say all taxi drivers are bad, but the situation was low satisfaction, right? So this is the market opportunity that Uber faced, right? It's fundamentally different than what the segue person faced. And so what did Uber do? They saw this upper left quadrant opportunity. They saw the ability of technology to solve it better. And they just solved that same need of taking you where you need to go with a much better satisfaction, right? And so Uber and Lyft have done a lot of things right to be successful as far as your product and operations and scaling. But I think one of the fundamental reasons they were so successful is that they were fundamentally dealing with an upper left quadrant need, right? And there are reasons like taxis had monopolies with the medallion system and things like that. So that's the idea, right? So we have an example of someone going after an upper left quadrant need and delivering a lot of value. We have someone, segue, trying to take it to 11 and disrupt and not succeeding. So, you know, and again, the segue thing, I didn't say it, but there's a saying like, if you build it, they will come from the movie. You know, that's a very risky way. That's why how you end up with that 80, 90% failure rate is you're like, oh gosh, I think wait till they see this new technology, wait till they see this new solution. That's fine, but you better be clear on what's the problem it's going to solve and plot it on that important satisfaction, and it should be in that upper left quadrant. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. It doesn't matter. If you go back to that chart, it doesn't matter if you do an amazing job at coding the feature and the UX design. If it's in these two quadrants, it's not going to create customer value. It's not going to be successful. If it's up here, unless you have a true disruption that takes it to 11, it's not going to be successful, right? So this is the least risky way to go from a customer value standpoint right there, okay? Now, the other thing you can do is you can actually use the same framework I'm going to close out with to assess your current product. Say you have a current product, which I'm sure many of you do. You can assess this, okay? And now what we do basically is we kind of switch the perspective to ask, in our product, we have a lot of features. Let's see, try to assess the importance and satisfaction of each feature and see how much customer value it's creating, right? And so I want to share an example where I did this for a product. We had a lot of features in the product. There were 13 key features that we wanted to assess how we were doing on, with an eye towards, hey, if any of these are not where we want them to be, we can use this to prioritize which features we need to go back and redesign and relaunch, basically. That was the idea. So here's the data. So now we have importance and satisfaction. Instead of low, medium, high, we actually have numbers going up to 100, right? And we have 13 points plotted here. That was, each of those points is one of the key features, plotted with its average satisfaction and importance. Now, the first number, that first feature jumped out at me was this one. What were customers saying? They were saying it's 100% importance and 98% satisfaction. That is awesome. That, you know, that's about as close as you can get to perfect product market feature market fit and creating value, right? If we have 2 more percentage points potentially to gain on satisfaction, that is pretty darn good, right? Again, in a customer value standpoint, the closer you are to this corner, the better. And we had a cloud of features here. We had this one here, but we had this one here, which was the closest to that upper left corner, right? It was relatively high importance in the 80s and really low satisfaction in the 50s. So we used this data to say, okay, for our next product cycle, we are going to go do some qualitative discovery research, figure out what's wrong with this, why is this not meeting customer needs, redesign it and relaunch it. And so then we use this framework to help pick what to do to create the most customer value of our existing product and fixing features, right? So you can use this to figure out how people are using your product and where it's creating value and where you have an opportunity to do better, right? It's the same thing. This is the upper left quadrant need. All right, in summary, prioritizing needs, don't jump to solutions, right? Start in the problem space. Hopefully after today's talk, you'll start noticing that what people are suggesting and advocating for are solutions, not problems. You can use that why hack to get people to focus on the problem, hopefully. Create your problem space definition. One thing I forgot to mention is if you start with verbs, that makes it better problem space statements than nouns or adjectives. Then you can score each need on importance and satisfaction, you know, either with a formal survey or with just your sticky notes on the grid. And then you can prioritize based on how close it is to the upper left corner. There are 2 main ways to create more value than what's out there. The least risky and like one I highly recommend is if you can find an upper left quadrant opportunity, go for that. That would be great. The other way to go is to try to take it to 11, like Spinal Tap with the Disruptive Innovation, where you're increasing the satisfaction beyond what the current leaders have. And then you can also assess the importance for satisfaction for your features. Real quick, I want to share a couple resources. One, I have a YouTube channel. All my talks are there. I also mentioned I run a meetup. All my meetup host talks are there too. So we have over 21,000 subscribers. You can go to this URL, or you can hold up your phone to that QR code. You can subscribe. We post new videos every month there. And then I mentioned my meetup, basically. We have over 12,000 members. During COVID, it was virtual. Now that we're out of COVID, we still keep it virtual, but also in person here in Silicon Valley. So I invite you to join. That next event date is actually old. I'll put the current one. Here it is right here. Our next one is actually next Friday on stakeholder management. It's a book next Thursday, sorry, on stakeholder management. So I just put that chat in there. And then with that, I want to thank everybody. I'd love to hear your feedback on my talk. You can hold up your QR code. You can go to this URL, and please use the Q&A. I'm happy to answer questions in the time we have left. So please use the Q&A tab here on Zoom, and happy to answer questions. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was such a great overview. And yeah, we have questions coming in, so make sure to drop it in that Q&A function. We'll try to get to as many as possible. We have a couple entrepreneurs in the audience, wondering like to what frequency they should iterate on this model, like long term. Kind of, what are your thoughts on that? Like how often this process should be looked at?
Yeah, well, basically, first off, there's different stages of product market fit. If you're working on your first product, you want to do it for your first product, basically, to make sure that it's kind of set up for success. Now, a lot of people build the first product and they don't quite get the adoption or traction that they want. They don't get the level of product market fit. So then you can use this to diagnose what's working, what's not working, right? Like you could apply that feature thing. Again, that problem space, when you have a really solid problem space definition, like I showed you with TurboTax, it can be pretty evergreen, right? It's like we can keep mining and delivering. If you look at a lot of products that have been around for a while, they're still delivering the same fundamental benefits. They're just doing so in better and better ways, right? You do want to keep an eye on competition to see if there's some other benefits that they're starting to address that you might need to address, right? Or if there's some new technology waves that are offering higher levels of satisfaction, you want to do that. But I think, I started my career at Intuit, and Intuit like successfully, competed with Microsoft, which is a much larger company. And the top reason why is we were closer to our customers than they were. And so, yes, you want to keep an eye on competition. Yes, you want to keep an eye on the market. But most truly innovative companies, they keep the most attention on their customers and listening to their customers and making sure they're delivering value for them by being really clear on the customer needs, right? And doing a good job in discovery research and applying some of the concepts that I shared here. So you don't need to update it that often. I think you just have to be honest with where you're at when you launch your V1, or if you have a product in market, be honest with where you're at. That's how you figure out what you need to iterate and what you need to pivot, and if you have to pivot, or what you need to change, right? And so again, the longer answer is, if you go back to that product market fit pyramid, you have to diagnose which layers are we having problems at. Are we addressing the wrong target market? Are we solving the wrong needs? Do we have the wrong value prop? Are we missing a key feature, or is our UX design, missing something or not good enough? So that's how you kind of diagnose what you need to do. But basically, that this layer we're talking about today is the second layer up. It's very foundational. So you shouldn't have to. You're not going to be like changing the fundamental benefits. Like think about TurboTax. They're not. It's the same benefits, every year and again, but they still innovate every year and they offer new things every year. So.
Right.
Hope that's
Yeah,
helpful.
absolutely. That's super helpful. We have another question here. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you see a couple of questions,
Sure.
but yeah, I think I would love to, just get your thoughts on, this idea of like gauging user satisfaction
Yeah.
over surveying and
Sure.
kind
Yeah.
of finding the balance
Yeah.
there.
So what I was trying to say is, and as I say in my book, is you can use the importance for satisfaction with the sample size of 0. Step 1 is you with your team get on a whiteboard or get on something and you brainstorm. You do what I said. You brainstorm the benefits without getting solution pollution. You do the 2x2 and you plot them, right? And you have some knowledge you have some insight and gut and knowledge about your space and your customers. It may be right, maybe very right, maybe very wrong, but you can form initial assumptions without doing any surveys. And then what you can do is my next step I would do, I wouldn't go to a survey. People overuse surveys. I would then go do discovery research and say, okay, we feel like these 2 benefits are in that upper left quadrant. They're high importance, low satisfaction. Let's go talk to our target customers and have them independently tell us what the importance and satisfaction is. We're not going to tell them what we think. We're just going to listen and see if what they say jives with our hypotheses, right? At the end of the day, when you're placing these things on the grid, it's your hypothesis. And so you want to get some data to prove or disprove the hypothesis. I would not jump straight to surveys to do that. I would basically go and do discovery research. Now that's in the context of a V1 product. You can also do that. I showed you a survey version of it with an existing product. But you can also, that's why I like to use those scales. Even when I'm interviewing people and doing qualitative research, I'll pull out the satisfaction scale, the importance scale, so we can have a more nuanced conversation. Because if I don't have a scale and I'm talking to someone, I say, how important is it? Oh, it's pretty important. You have no idea. Is that a 3 out of 5? Is that a 4 out of 5? Right. So even you don't need to use surveys to do any of the stuff that I'm talking about. I did share an example where we did use survey to assess an existing product. Again, you could just do a large discovery research project with your existing people, and your sample size wouldn't be as big, but you'll get directional data that help you make decisions. So this isn't about constantly surveying your audience. And I hear what you're saying. I mean, you're going to get a low response rate, first off, and secondly, you might fatigue people, like you're saying, which is the challenge these days in doing surveys in general. So
Yeah, absolutely.
real quick, I want to address Ray's point. Hey, Ray, thanks for that. You know what? So I actually, this is me a few weeks ago in July. I just re-recorded the audiobook. I'm narrating it. It's going to be out on July 23rd. So I didn't mention it. Ray just mentioned it because I didn't narrate the original version. And he says, I wish that I narrated it because of my energy. So it'll be there on July 23rd. Yeah. And so thanks for that. I appreciate that. You're not the first person to make that comment. So I'm excited to be having that version out. Okay, let's see what else we got for questions.
Awesome. I think this question is kind of interesting, and I think they're kind of asking about, when looking at customer needs, are you really looking at the end user? Are you looking at, the person who's making, payments? Where do you
Yeah, so basically,
yeah.
oh yeah, and I didn't have that. So basically, you have this product market fit pyramid. In B2C, you might just have one pyramid like this, although it's not even true. Think about Meta, right? Think about Facebook. You could say, oh, they're B2C, so they have a bunch of customers. That's true, but they also have a bunch of advertisers, right? That they have to make happy. And so they actually have a second pyramid for advertisers. In B2B, I usually show a slide that has two pyramids. One is like the end user, and the other one is kind of like the buyer, basically, right? If you think about B2B like Salesforce, the head of sales might be the one making the purchase decision, but it's all the individual members of the sales team that are using it on a day-to-day basis, right? So basically, you can have multiple pyramids. And the idea is you need for each customer, everything's a function of the customer. So you have to figure out, okay, what does the buyer care about? What are their needs? And you can run importance and satisfaction on the problem space for the buyer, and you run importance and problem space and satisfaction for the problem space for the customer, right? So you basically need to do it for each. And we talked about Uber. Uber has drivers and they have riders. So they have two pyramids too. Airbnb has renters and they have guests. So, healthcare, you might have providers, patients, insurance. You might have three. So sometimes, any two-sided market, you're going to have two of these things, right? B2B, you have buyers. So that's the idea. Then the next question I usually get is, great, how do we prioritize across those two? And I don't have a silver bullet answer. You have to just look at the two and you have to figure out how, which set, okay, this set for the buyer, this set for the user is our top set that we're going to start with. You have to make some trade-off prioritization calls across the pyramids, right? But that's the idea, is you basically need a pyramid for each customer segment, a major customer type that you need to make sure you're creating value for. That's the idea, basically.
Absolutely. Awesome. Dan, this has been so helpful. If you had just one key takeaway or piece of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the
Sure.
audience, what would that be?
So the reason I love this talk the most is because I truly think if you follow the advice in the talk, it is the number one thing you can do to increase your odds of success as an entrepreneur. Because when you look around at why products fail, the top reason is they start with a solution, right? And you actually see this with Gen AI right now, right? Gen AI, let's talk, is Gen AI a problem or a solution? It's a solution, it's a technology. And so this is what happens in the tech world, is whether it's chatbots or whether it's blockchain, everyone gets all excited about the new technology. And there's no doubt it can probably offer some disruptions, but people start with the solution, right? And so that's why a large percentage, this 80% number is going to apply to all the Gen AI startups right now. It's just going to happen. Like most of them are going to fail because they weren't clear on what problem. They're sitting there with a Gen AI hammer looking for a Gen AI nail and not getting clear, right? So start with the problem. Again, the message is not never think about solutions. Start with the problem and use my simple 2x2 importance and satisfaction. Find a problem, find a combination of a target market and a problem that's in that upper left opportunity quadrant like Uber did. And then that's going to increase your odds significantly, and you're going to do way better than the 80%, because now it's just a matter of execution of your feature set and your UX design, and you can get feedback on those basically. So anyway, that's my top advice to increase your odds of success.
Awesome. Thank you so much for such an incredible overview, Dan. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, we are super thankful that you joined us.
Me too. It's been great. Thank you. Good luck to everybody with your products, and hope to see you at some other online events or in person.
Awesome. And to our audience, we'd love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using those links that are going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.